So here we have a question from Paul, and he wants to know about putting bars and beats time frame to fit music on the tracks. And Philip gives him a suggestion that he can use beat detection, which is apparently German here. We'll show what that looks like in English, but we can see that it's right below effects and filter. To which Paul responds, that was interesting, but that wasn't exactly what he had in mind. He sees that it puts the beat markers on the track and detects beat, but what he wanted was to fully change the main timeline to show beats and bars from the 0 point. So let's jump into that. First off, a disclaimer, I am not an expert on audio and what the different tools are that's needed. But I'm going to give it a shot to see if we can't figure out how to give Paul what he needs. And with that, let's look at what tools are available. First, we need to get an audio sound, and I'm just going to go into one of the ones that I've downloaded. I would rather play a real song, but YouTube, I'm sure, wouldn't allow that. So let's see what we have in downloads. So I'm going to just grab this teardrop one because it has a beat on it. And this is what we get. And let's just play a small segment here. And if we look at it up in here, we can see the graph of it, I suppose. But also, when we're playing it down here, the graph shows right up here. Now, that doesn't have a scale on it, so obviously that's part of Paul's problem. Now, what Philip was talking about was beat detection. And before you put something on the timeline in the audio, you can right-click on it and you can add beat detection. And you notice there's also a beat option, but that doesn't highlight until after you have beat detection. So you could do that on your music before you drag it down. If you've already dragged it down to the timeline, then of course you would right-click on here. And as we remember from Philip's post or his picture, his screenshot, he used this Smart Edit tool. And then you have silence detection and beat detection. So the beat detection would give you these beats here. And this is where my knowledge of music kind of drops a little bit in. I'm not sure what that is, but we can go in again to the Smart Edit tools, and we now have the beat option. And here it has, I guess, 2 different ways to detect beats, 1 and 2. Again, I don't know what the difference between 1 and 2 is, or if it's twice as much or whatever. And here we can see that it highlights every 4th beats. I guess we can change that to some value that might be more usable to us as far as the scale of these markers on here. And highlight offsets. Again, I'm ignorant of this, but presumably you can do something with there to get more accuracy. And then you can highlight beats only. I don't know what happens if you don't mark the highlights. What do you get? I guess you get all of the highlights are must be the major beat 1, and the other ones are beat 2. Now, so that's one way to do it. It's not a scale, which is what Paul is asking about. But he did talk about accuracy and that these markers are not accurate enough. So you can scale up the timeline, and you can now get more precise increments. In fact, every increment now is 1 frame. So you should be able to get that. But I get it. He wants a scale similar to we have a time scale here. I don't know how that you would replace the time scale with an audio scale. I guess it would have values here. And when we scrub across this, we don't see anything. Normally when we play, and we'll play a little segment here, we will see the scale that I think Paul is looking for right here. So that's kind of a rough scale. So let's make a couple of adjustments to the screen right off the bat. We don't need to look at this so much because we're trying to focus on the music here. Now we do have it up here, and we can scale that in and out, you know, on the x-axis. But it would be nice to be able to see a little bit more on the y-axis. And so we can, by grabbing, moving our cursor over the track header, we can get the double arrow, we can left click and drag, and now we can see a larger scale. And of course, this is our volume bar here. Again, that's not what he was looking for. But when we drag it, we don't see any scale. We don't see anything right here. And I'm going to get into a workaround for that a little bit later on here. But I just want to show that there is another option to add what I think Paul wants, which is this. You click this little arrow here, audio meter. You now have the meter. Unfortunately, again, you don't have it when you're you know, just dragging the playhead across. But if you do play, then you do have your zero scale. When you do play it, you do get your zero scale, and you got your left and right speakers, and you have your decibels. So here you do have it, but scrubbing across just manually doesn't give it to you. So this may be all Paul wanted, was just to be able to turn this on and see it, and then try to figure out where on the scale that it exactly is at. Now, I don't know if, again, if we do this right here, I don't know if we can get more beat options in here. Highlight every fourth beat. Okay, let's try this second beat. I have no idea what it is, but what if we make this value 8? I don't know if that will give us. Now we have, I don't know if we have more or less or whatever, but anyway, I don't know anything about those things, so I'm not going to pretend to tell you what each of those functions do. But we know that it deals basically with these markers. And you can choose to have just the highlight markers or these other markers, whatever. Okay, so this may be what Paul was looking for. He might be looking for it going like this, and he doesn't get it that way. So let's look at another option, which is kind of your own makeshift little scale, so to speak. You can also just move one frame with these buttons right here, or the sideways arrow keys. But there's another way to move around if you want to use the markers. And there was that offset option. I don't know how that works, but presumably that gets you closer to whatever it is that you want. But if we use the shift up and down keys, we can move from marker to marker. So if you want to move to the right, you do shift down on the arrow key, and then we're moving on the markers. And if you want to move back one, hold down the shift key and then hit the up arrow key and you move backwards. So here's a way to jump to certain parts of the audio depending on where the markers are. Now, these were based on, you know, the interpretation of the audio itself, and so I would presume that they would be close enough, but again, I'm not an expert on that. So we can do that. There's one more thing that we can do to maybe assist. It's just kind of a visual output thing. It's not really a scale thing, but let's look at it. Okay, so the last thing that you might add to your video here is an effect. And if you type in scale line, which I did here, I should start from scratch, do that again, and we'll type in scale, and we'll choose the scale line. What that then gets you is you can't get this wave line here, but you have a number of free options here. There's a digital wave like so. There's this kind of an output. There's a colorized version. These are all free. And I'm not an expert in this, but it seems to me if you want to count bars or something like that, then maybe this one with the dots would be adequate. Although I have to say this is an effect. It's not a representation of the actual music. In other words, it would be nice if it was. Maybe there is an effect in there that costs money or something that I haven't seen. But this does give you this visual output right here. And if you had a video editor underneath it, or video editor, if you had a video clip, a music video underneath there, you could just put this wave thing on the top, and then you would be able to see it. Use the position to kind of bring it into alignment. And if nothing else, as you're moving along on the timeline, you can at least see the difference in the output of the I think maybe the volume of the music. Again, I was hoping that this was a representation of the various frequencies, but I don't believe it is. I think it's just the visual representation. So there is a number of these free ones and paid ones that you can choose from, that you could add, that might give a little more specific clarity. Here I'm stepping through it frame by frame using the sideways arrow keys to get to maybe the precise one that I want. Again, if this is zoomed in and you're using zoomed out, I guess is the answer here. Let's look at this up here. This is the frame count. Well, this is the seconds and this is the frames right there. I know that when you move things, when it's zoomed in or zoomed out, that you are often moving more than one frame, so that makes it difficult. But if you're going to drag the playhead, then zoom all the way in so every click is just one frame. And just keep an eye right on that here. But if you're using these keys, it doesn't matter what the zoom level is, because this will always just be one frame. Likewise, the keyboard keys, sideways arrows, will also be one frame, unless you hold down the shift key and then it's going to the next marker on the timeline, whether you have the highlights only or whether you have all of the detected beats in there. So in lieu of not having a scale right on here, or maybe right on the audio track itself, which seemed like that would be the more useful place to put such a scale, then you can put this little effect up there. So we've talked about this. We've talked about the use of the markers. And then we talked a little bit about adding in an effect that kind of replicates volume in the music, or maybe the beat. Hopefully this gets Paul what he needs.